Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. Today we're going to be continuing on with the V-BT08 set. This is the Silverdust Blaze. Today we're going to be talking about our Susanoo Oracle Think Tank deck. So this is another G-clone deck that is being brought into Standard. Has a lot of cool mechanics such as checking the top, however many cards and revealing, and then gets effects based off of what's revealed, and it has a lot of like critical gain that it gets and a lot of like Vanguard focus power and critical, and it becomes really hard after a while for your opponent to block the amount of criticals and advantage that you have and stuff like that. So it's a really fun deck, and I think overall it's a pretty good deck coming out of this set. But before we get right into it, if you guys haven't already, be sure to subscribe and click the bell button down below so you don't have to miss a single video going forward. Be sure to comment down below letting me know what you thought of the video, maybe any advice or tips or tricks that you might have for anybody coming to see my build. Maybe you have a different opinion on the build or whatever. Just leave all those in the comment section down below. Also, be sure to check out my second YouTube channel if you guys are interested in anime, animation, or video games. That is Let's Plays Animes, down in the description below. Also, check out that join button for this channel if you guys are willing to support the channel and you want a little bit more from the channel, or you just want to show love for the channel. Definitely click that join button down below. Also, last thing, check out our Twitch, which is LPA Empire. I'm going to be combining a bunch of things from both my channels on there, so I'm really excited about that, and have a lot of things planned for that I can't really reveal yet because I'm not really sure if it's going to work out the way that I have envisioned. But subscribe anyways, follow anyways, so that you know everything that is going on. But with that being said, let's get right into the Susanoo deck today. So like I said, we're going to be talking about Susanoo. This is our Oracle Think Tank deck. So let's start with our grade 3s as usual. So we have 4 Supreme Heavenly Battle Deity Susanoo. So just like the old Susanoo, I believe, checked the top 3 cards of the deck, and then you could add cards to your hand. So this build does a lot more than just add cards to your hand and like needlessly get advantage. Basically the old Susanoo build in G, I think, just got a lot of card advantage, and it didn't really have like an end game to it, except in the stride form of Ichikishima and stuff like that. So this is really cool because this gives you a way to legitimately like in games or put offensive pressure on your opponent through all the way that the card abilities work together with each other. So let's go over Susanoo's ability. He has 2 abilities. So the first one is when placed on the Vanguard circle, look at the top 2 cards of your deck and reveal up to 1 card from among them, put it on the top of your deck, and then you can put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is a really cool ability because it allows you to set up obviously what's going to be on the top of your deck. That's really powerful in in any Vanguard deck, but especially here because we set triggers on the top of our deck and we can tell what we're going to drive check. And if you don't have a trigger that you're going to set up, then you can also be setting up Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu, which is usually a cross ride for Amaterasu, for CEO Amaterasu, but here it's actually support for this deck, so it's actually really cool in that way. But she basically acts as a critical trigger when she's revealed for your Vanguard on the top, so that also helps you. You're trying to end games really quickly with this deck. There's a lot of critical offensive pressure, so you basically want to use all that to stack the cards that you need to have on top, and then proceed to check them and proceed to win the game, hopefully. So let's talk about its second ability. Is an activation skill on the Vanguard circle, meaning that it can be activated at any point during the main phase once per turn. You can counterblast 1 and soul blast 1, reveal 2 cards from the top of your deck and put them into your hand, and then you activate all trigger effects of the revealed cards, and if your soul has a grade 3, then you can reveal 3 cards instead of 2. So what this means is that if you stack triggers on top of your deck using the first skill, like we talked about before, you can also immediately after use the second skill, and then whatever triggers are in the top cards of your deck, you can just automatically activate the effects and they go to your hand. So not only are you getting a good amount of shield to your hand in the form of triggers, but you're also getting those trigger effects and you're getting to do it before you drive check. So it's basically like almost like doing additional drive checks, but you get to set up your critical like a little bit early. It adds more, obviously offensive pressure to your opponent, and then with you still stacking things as the main phase goes on, most likely you will know what you're going to drive check, and that it really helps if your opponent doesn't have a PG, because then they guard you for a 1 to pass or a 2 to pass, and then you're instantly able to tell in your head, can I pass this attack? And then if the attack does pass, it's usually doing a lot of damage to your opponent. So this deck is very, very dangerous and very, very gimmicky sometimes. Also, I feel like I should mention that this deck is obviously OTT, so it is a Protect clan. I usually prefer going Protect 1 in this deck. I don't think that Protect 2 is a factor in this deck, but that's just my personal opinion. I think Force or Protect 1 helps you a lot against Force, especially the Force decks that are out right now. Messiah, you know, Kagero, both Blade Master and the Cross. Like, PGs just always help you a lot. And then also we run the Sentinel crits in this deck, so it also gives you a lot of leeway both ways, because you'll also have the Protect 1 Sentinel, and then you'll also have your Sentinel that's like a huge guard. So it gives you a lot of defensive pressure to your hand, or not defensive pressure, but defense to block your opponent's offensive pressure, and then lets you just survive for longer as the game goes on. So then our second grade 3 in the deck, which we discussed a little bit before, is for Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu. This has 2 abilities. The first one is when it's in your deck and it's revealed by a card's effect, then you can bind the top card of your deck and one of your Vanguards gets plus 10,000 power and a critical. So this is really cool because it literally just does this off of being revealed. It doesn't have to get added to your hand. It doesn't have to go anywhere. However, if you reveal it and it doesn't go anywhere and it's on top, then obviously you bind the top card, and that would mean that you're binding her. So a lot of times, like when you reveal this card, you add it to your hand so that you can use the ability again, like later in the turn or later in the game or something like that, because there's ways to recycle this back to the top of your deck. But basically, like, just know that it gets a lot of offensive pressure to your Vanguard, because it starts to make your Vanguard really, really big with critical, and every single turn, like, your opponent only has 4 PGs or 4 Sentinels in their deck, unless they're also playing a Protect deck just like you, so be wary of that. But if they're not playing a Protect deck, you know, be aware that they only have so many Sentinels, and it's most likely, like, in the early game, like, in the first, you know, 1 or 2 grade 3 turns, they're not going to have all of them in their hand. So after, you know, like, the first or second, really big attacks with a lot of critical, like, it's going to start to wear down on your opponent. It's going to be really hard for them to start to efficiently guard all of this pressure. So then let's talk about its second ability. Honestly, one of the best things about this card is just all around good, but the second ability is just the cherry on top of the ice cream cone. So basically, it has a Vanguard rearguard skill that says when it attacks, discard a card from your hand. Look at the top 3 cards from your deck, reveal up to 1 normal unit from among them, put it into your hand, and put the rest on the top of your deck in any order you wish. So, this does a couple things. Number 1, it reveals a normal unit, which means that if you have a Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu in your top 3 cards, boom, your Vanguard gets 10,000 a crit. And then also, when you're putting those other cards back to the top of your deck, those cards can be triggers, so you can tell what you're going to drive check, which is very, 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 very powerful. Very, very helpful. It's really hard for your opponent to deal with, especially when you put 2 back to top, because since you can't put any to bottom, your opponent just always has to assume that what you put back to top is going to be something offensively pressuring to them. So even if it's like 2 vanilla cards and you put it back to top, your opponent might overguard because they might think that you're going to check 2 triggers, which is very, very powerful and very helpful because your opponent wastes shield that they don't need. And then another turn where they don't have the shield, they'll just die because of it. So very, very good. Moving on to our grade 2, grade 2s. We have 4 Goddess of Streamwaters Ichikishima. So Ichikishima used to be the Stride in this deck in G format, but now is a grade 2. So it has an effect in the deck just like Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu. So when it's revealed by a card effect, you bind the top card of your deck and one of your Vanguards gets plus 10,000 power. Obviously not as good as Amaterasu because Amaterasu gives plus 10,000 power and a crit. Ichikishima just gives plus 10,000 power. So we obviously use her less when we have Amaterasu as an option, but she is a backup option just in case you can't find Amaterasu or you cannot get to her in time. The second ability is when placed, look at the top card of your deck, put it on the top or bottom. Then you can reveal the top card of your deck, and if the card revealed is a normal unit, then this unit gets plus 10,000 power. So this is really, really good when your top card is Ichikishima or you know, Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu once again. They will get binded once you reveal them for their effects, but you will get the plus 10,000 or the plus 10,000 to crit to your Vanguard. So very, very good, and it's not like you don't run 4 of both, so if you have to lose one, it's no big deal. Moving on to our next grade 2, we have 3 Diviner Kudokazuchi. So what Kudokazuchi does is Vanguard Rearguard once per turn. You can, during your main phase, Soul Blast 1 and discard a card, and then you reveal the top card of your deck and put it into your hand, and then you activate all the trigger effects of the revealed card. And if you revealed a normal unit, then this unit gets plus 6,000 power until the end of the turn. So it makes it better with Kudokazuchi's skill to reveal either Ichihishima or Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu, since they are both normal units, and they would go to your hand, meaning that whatever unit follows that in the deck in the top order would get bound for the effect of Ichihishima or Amaterasu, but your Kudokazuchi would get plus 6, so that'd be good. And then worst case scenario, it's not really worst case scenario, but if it's a trigger instead, then not only does that trigger card get added to your hand for additional shield, but you get to activate that trigger effect, so it's not a waste. So very, very good. Next up, we have 3 Promise Daughter. So Promise Daughter is very good for a couple reasons. One, because we're in the same set as Kagero, so Kagero cannot retire this card. That's important because, you know, there's a lot of sniping abilities that happen in Kagero, even full board wipes and with Blade Master, and Promise Daughter cannot be touched by a specific target or a board wipe. In general, it just says cannot be retired by opponent's card effects. Also, if this is, you know, applicable to you, if you have something that you're fighting against that blows things off the Guardian Circle, like in Premium, D-Police, this card cannot be retired by opponent's card effects on the Guard Circle either. So it is the guard that it is. This is obviously more useful when you're going Protect 2, because you can Protect 2, Intercept, and then your opponent can't do anything to your guard. But, you know, obviously, like I told you guys, we go Protect 1 in this deck, so that's not really as applicable. But just in case, just so you guys know what you have the possibility of doing. But the first skill is Vanguard Rearguard. During the battle that it attacks a Vanguard, if the number of cards in your hand is 4 or more, this unit gets plus 6,000 power. So obviously this card becomes 15 by itself, plus an 8k is 23, which is a great number on all Vanguards of any kind. Moving on to our last grade 2 in the deck, we have 2 Battle Sister Choquette. So what Choquette does is on Vanguard Rearguard when placed, you can Soul Blast 1 card, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 grade 3 from among them, put it on the top of your deck, and then you shuffle the rest of the cards looked at onto the bottom of your deck, and then this unit gets plus 5k. So this is very, very good, obviously, when you reveal Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu as your grade 3, because then Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu, after the effect is resolved, will get bound, and then your Vanguard will get plus 10 to crit. So this is very, very good, because in your grade 2 and even grade 1 turns, you can activate Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu's effect to have that crit pressure going early for your opponent, and it's very, very hard for your opponent to deal with if they don't have that many cards to guard with in hand and stuff like that. Moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 Divine Sword Ame no Murakumo. So Ame no Murakumo skill is basically like the other, I basically call it the grade 3 Searcher grade 1 clones that we've had in every single clan. So you guys should be used to it by now. However, this card specifically is really, really good in this deck, because when you check top 5 and you reveal a grade 3 and it goes to your hand, if that's Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu, then you're getting an early plus 10,000 and a crit to your Vanguard. So that's very, very important, especially when you go second in this deck, because you can ride this card. If you get Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu, you can proc that instantly, and then because the first skill is active from the second part of the skill, then you will be attacking with 23k and a crit, and your opponent rarely guards that during turn 1, and if they do, they have to waste like a very large amount of shield, so they're just not going to guard it during turn 1, which is an easy 2 damage on your opponent, maybe 3 if you check a crit. So you guys can see why this is very dangerous and why it ramps up to be hard to deal with very fast, because you're basically hitting your opponent with these really, very big numbers with crit before they have the resources to deal with what you've amassed. So like we said, Vanguard Rearguard skill during your turn, if you revealed cards from your deck by a card's ability this turn, then this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So basically, every single turn that you do anything in this deck, you get plus 5,000 from this card. So it becomes a 13k attacker or a 13k booster. Very good. And then the second ability is when placed from hand, look at the top 5 cards of your deck. reveal up to 1 grade 3 card from among them, preferably Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu. And then you put into your hand, shuffle your deck, and if you put a card in your hand, then you can discard a card, which you can also choose to discard Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu as well, knowing that it works very well with Muto, which is what we're about to talk about. So next up, our grade 1 in our grade 1 lineup is for Diviner Muto. So Diviner Muto, what it does is when it's placed on the rearguard circle, you can counterblast 1, put a normal unit from your drop zone on top of your deck, and if you did, then this unit gets plus 15,000 power. I think that this card is so free and so broken. Like, Counterblast 1 is nothing, and then you're putting a normal unit to the top of your deck, which can be either Ichikishima or preferably Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu, and then you're just getting plus 15k. So it's a 23k booster or a 23k attacker by itself, and that is insane. So this card is definitely a staple, definitely has to be run at 4. Our next grade 1 in the grade 1 lineup is 3 Tetramagus. So Tetramagus is really good setup when you know that the top card of your deck is a normal unit that you don't want to drive check or you don't want it there. It's very good to just sub it out for a crit. So Tetramagus' skill is when placed on rearguard circle, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this is a good requirement for this ability, because it doesn't require that your opponent is grade 3, it just requires that you're grade 3. So basically, if you're on grade 3 and your opponent's on grade 2, this is still very hurtful to them for you to do this. So when placed, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, counterblast 1, draw a card, and you can reveal up to 1 critical trigger from your hand and put it on the top of your deck. So basically ensuring that you're going to check a crit. Very powerful. And then that crit will go right back to your hand, so it's not like you lost shield or anything like that. So our next grade 2 and our last grade 2, or sorry, last grade 1 in the grade 1 lineup is actually 2 Oracle Guardian Gymni. So what Gymni does is activation on the rearguard circle. If the number of cards in your damage zone is 3 or more, then you can put this card into your soul and countercharge 1. This is good because we are refilling our counterblast usage with this card, but we're also refilling our soul. And both of those resources are used by this deck. So running 2 Gymni is just perfect for being able to get those resources back for you to do more things. For our starter, we run 1 Solar Maiden Yuzume. So what Yuzume does is it's just our regular draw a card starter like we have in every single standard deck. Basically, when you ride upon it, you draw a card, and then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 1 or greater, then you get a quick shield. So very easy discard fodder or easy 5k shield for you to just throw for one of your opponent's early attacks or something like that. Usually we use it as discard fodder. You know, you see that you guys in this deck, you have cards that or abilities that discard cards. So you have, you know, Kotokazuchi, etc. So basically, you know, just use it as you see fit. It's not that hard to figure out what you would use it for once you see your opening hand or once you see what you would be using it for. You can even use it for Amenio Murakumo, reveal a Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu, and then discard your quick shield, which is a perfect going second. That's what you want ideally on your turn 1. So then for our triggers, we run 12 crit and 4 heal. Obviously, we run such an aggressive trigger lineup because we're trying to end our opponent as fast as possible. And this deck just makes it really easy because we get enough card advantage, so we don't need draws in this deck. And so we get enough card advantage. And also, when we run it this way, we also have more shield than other decks because we naturally just have so much raw shield in the form of these crit triggers, especially the Sentinel crit triggers. So for our crit triggers, we run 4 Battle Sister Ginger, 2 Oracle Guardian Nikkei or Nike, whatever you want to call it, 2 Psychic Bird, 4 Divine Sword Kusanagi, and 4 Battle Sister Brioche. So with that being that, we're going to get right into the games here, which I'm pretty excited to show you guys. So we're going to load up Susanoo game 1. And game 1, you guys can see here we're playing against Messiah, so this is a prevalent deck of this format, so it'd be cool for you guys to see. So our opponent starts off with riding the Lady Battler of the White Dwarf, checks top 5, gets a grade 3. I think. Actually, my opponent didn't get a grade 3. He just drew a card and then he whiffed. So we actually went for a Divine Sword Ame Kuro. We didn't get the Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu, but we did get a Susanoo. So we attack, and then our opponent attacks us and gets a heal. And so on our turn, we ride Promise Daughter. We use Kuro skill to Soul Blast 1. and discard Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu, knowing that we have a Muto in our hand. So we do get a heal trigger, and we heal because of Kurokazachi, how it works. And then we call a Gemini, so we attack for 23. Our opponent, gets a damage trigger in the form of a heal. So at least he wastes a heal, but our Kurokazachi could not hit because of that. He goes to use Alter Ego skill. He attacks our Vanguard with Blast Monk, and he chooses to bind Kurokazuchi, which is fine. Not really a super useful card to us anyways. So our opponent attacks for 13. We no guard. And then our opponent attacks for 38, and we decided to take that as well. The reason why we're taking so much early damage is because there's so many counterblast requirement costs in our deck that we prefer to just have it. Also, we're going to have enough defensiveness to block his turns after this because we are a protect deck. So we rode Susanoo, got to protect one, and then we use the skill to look at top two. We put one to the top, and then we use Muto to put the Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu to the top. Then we use Susanoo to counterblast one and soul blast one, reveal the top two cards, which is Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu and a crit. So basically our Vanguard has 3 crit now. We use Gemini skill to countercharge one. And then we go for playing Ichikishima. We reveal the top card, which is the Tetramagus. And so Ichikishima gets power. And then we call Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu. And because we know that we have a normal unit on top, we go for Tetramagus, drawing the Tetramagus that was on top and then replacing it with a crit. So going for the Amaterasu first, we discard the Tetramagus, looking at the top 3, getting the normal unit out, and then we're stacking 2 triggers back on top of our deck. And then our opponent PGs our Vanguard because he knows that he would just pretty much die if he took that. And so then we attack for 39, which our opponent decides to block. So our opponent is really into blocking early. I'm not exactly sure why, but I guess he just doesn't want to be bursted in a later turn, which is easier if you block first, I guess. So he goes for the order card that unlocks after using Alter Ego, and then he attacks for 15 into our Vanguard, which we block with an Intercept. We decide to take this rear guard because it is bigger, and so we get a critical trigger. So he attacks for 23. We throw down a crit for a 2 to pass, which he does not get any triggers. Perfect. We guard with a heal for the grade 4, and then we guard with a 2 heal triggers for the other grade 2. Next turn, we ride another Susanoo. The skill of Susanoo activates. We look at the top. Oh, sorry. We didn't even look at the top cards of our deck. I guess we forgot because this is the first time that I was ever playing the deck. So we use Susanoo skill, and I actually minus myself by not using the skill. But we looked at the top, and basically we gave a bunch of crits to our Vanguard, and we split the crits among Amaterasu as well. So we use Amaterasu's skill to discard a card, and we get a Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu. And we made sure that there's a normal unit on top after that so that we could bind it to give our Vanguard another +10 in crit. So Susanoo currently has 4 crit on it. So he decided to take this rear guard with 2 crit, and then he decided to block our Vanguard with a bunch of cards for a no pass, and we check the crit. We attack his Vanguard for 23, and then he blocks with the last card in his hand. So he goes for Alter Ego once again, calling 2 cards as locked, attacking with the grade 4, which we block with one of our crits. Then he attacks us for 23, which we go ahead and we block for a 2 to pass with another one of our crits. He attacks for 40, we block with another one of our Sentinel crits, and then he attacks for 58, which we proceed to PG. Next turn after that, we ride Susanoo again. And then again, I forgot the Susanoo skill. So I guess I just wasn't really paying attention to that on-ride skill, which is very important because I should have been able to get bigger advantage off of that. But we do use Susanoo to check the top 3. And then we gave 1 crit to Vanguard and 1 crit to Ame no Sugume. And then we use Amaterasu skill to discard, look at the top 3. And then we got a normal unit to our hand. We put a heal and a normal unit on top of our deck. So our opponent takes it, and then we attack for 3 crit. We do heal, and then we attack for 51 2 crit. So our opponent guards with everything that he has, and then starts what should be his last turn. But as you guys can see, we have plenty of defense in our hand, plenty of advantage, so everything's fine. We guard with a crit. And then our opponent attacks for 36. We PG that. Our opponent checks the Alter Ego and a heal trigger. Unfortunately, healing it down to 3, which is not ideal for us, but that's okay. We PG the grade 4 with a crit, and then for 53 we just take that. So we draw for turn, and we have 5 cards in our deck, so we have to be very careful with how we play here. So I played Muto to add another card to the top of my deck, and then Muto gets plus 15k. And then we were thinking very carefully here about how not to deck out, basically. And so I knew that I could win in this final turn, assuming that I could pull my skills off. So we did go for the top 5, knowing that there was a Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu there that we just put there. So then we bound the top card, and that ends up being a Kurokazuchi. So Vanguard has a +1 crit. So then we go for Amaterasu skill, looking at the top 3, adding a normal unit to our hand, and then putting a crit and a normal unit on the top. And then we attack with 30k and a crit, which he no passes, and then we give the crit to our rear guard. And so obviously we're attacking for 46 with 2 crit. He only has an alter ego in his hand, and so he's forced to take it. And that was a really, really good game because we were left with 1 card in our deck. So very, very solid game. The only thing is, like, since that was my first time playing the deck, I obviously forgot about the on-ride skill, which I apologize to you guys for being the ones to watch that game. But obviously, you know, we live and we learn. So I actually was like messing myself up. I would have had more advantage if I remembered to use the Susanoo skill. So we're actually facing Harry second. So our opponent rides a Magia Doll Flying Periton, passes turn. We go for the Ame no Murakumo, and then we attack for 13. Our opponent no guards. We do check Ame no Sugume. So just to get us started off early. So our opponent rides Prana, and then calls Jacqueline. So looks at the top 7 cards, and then gets Dark Side Mirror Master and Lore Pigeon Pop. And since I don't know this deck, it's like harder for me to keep up. So I'm just reading. This is like the first time that I was ever playing against Harry as well, so I was reading all these cards. So I ride Kurokazuchi. I call Ichikishima. Ichikishima looks at the top card. And then I just chose to put it back on top and reveal it, so Ichikishima doesn't gain power. But I did that because of Kurokazuchi, so I discard the Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu. I put the crit and power to Vanguard. So I attack with 19 to crit. I check a Gemini, so my opponent takes 2 damage. One of those was a heal, which is unfortunate, but he adds the power to his rear guard for whatever reason. I assume that's because he wanted to block Vanguard with that card and add to Soul. So he rides Math Magician Harry, giving himself his Excel Circle. And then because of Harry's ability, it becomes the stage. This one Excel Circle becomes the stage. So he puts Lore Pigeon Pop there and sets up his board. So he goes for attacking us with Lore Pigeon Pop. We block it, and then he counterbusts 1 and returns it to hand, and then searches his deck for a Starry Pop Dragon. And then gets another Excel Circle, which this is not, you know, Excel. It just adds power to the stage because of how Harry works. So he attacks us for 30, which we no guard. He does check a crit, so we take it, and we do get a trigger. So he attacks us for 19, which we block. And then he attacks us for 20, which we take. And attacks us for 37, which we take, and we get a heal. Next turn, we do ride Susanoo. And again, we forgot I guess I just really wasn't remembering the on-place ability. So don't be like me. Remember the on-place ability of Susanoo, because obviously it will help you stack. So then we Muto. Oh yeah, okay. So I went back and I used Susanoo skill, and then I Muto'd. So then I used Susanoo's second ability, and I played Gemini. So then I attacked for 12, and I looked at top 3, added a normal unit, and put those other cards back on top of my deck. I attacked for 55, and my opponent doesn't have a PG, so he's forced to hard guard this, so he 2 to passes us. And we attack for 27 to crit with the last column. And then he chooses to just take that. So then our opponent rides another Harry, adding another 5k to his stage Excel Circle. Puts down a Lore Pigeon Pop, and then puts down a Dark Side Mirror Master to countercharge. And then he uses Harry's skill to call out Dark Side Mirror Master and Flying Periton. So he draws a card and he countercharges. And then he calls Jacqueline, using Jacqueline's ability to look at the top 7. And then he gets 2 Magia Doll cards. And then he puts a card from hand into soul, which is, you know, the Magia card. He attacks us for 22. Then he attacks us for 24, which we block. He uses Pop skill to call out the Starry Pop Dragon. Gets another Excel marker to power up his stage. And he draws. And then he attacks us for 20, which I was really hoping that he didn't check it at trigger. Because obviously, you know, the Starry Pop Dragon wouldn't go up to ridiculous numbers. But since he did, we're forced to block this like this. And then we block this like this. Because it says no Sentinels. So then for turn, we play Muto. Using Muto's skill to counterboss 1, put a Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu on top. Then we go for Susanoo. Counterboss 1, Soul Blast 1. Reveal the top 2. And then since one of them was Amaterasu, we bind the top card. Plus 10 in the crit to Vanguard. And then each Kishima skill as well. Bind the top card and then plus 10 to Vanguard. So then we put our Gemini into Soul. And then we use each Kishima skill to reveal the top card. We use Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu to get a normal unit into our hand and then stack the rest of the cards on the deck. So we go for 40. We get a crit trigger and a grade 1. And then we attack for 52, which our opponent proceeds to hard guard. And then our opponent doesn't do anything for turn, but goes to Lord Pigeon Pop, goes to Prana, and then goes to Masquerade Bunny, top 5, whiffs, and then calls out a Darkside Mirror Master. So goes for 29. And I was thinking about what needed to be done here. Obviously, since the Starry Pop Dragon was going to come out after that, but all my heals were gone anyways, so I essentially lost that game to Harry. So as you guys can see, Harry's a very offensive deck that is hard to fight, but honestly, since we're talking about just this set, it shouldn't be a huge issue for you guys because, you know, we're talking about fighting decks within the same set. But now that the Harry set has actually come out, that was an important game for you guys to glean knowledge from in case you were still wanting to play some of these V-BT08 decks. So now it seems like we're playing against Godhand, which is cool. We're playing a Protect deck, so ideally we're fine. But we actually go first this time, and it sucks because we do get a Goddess of the Amaterasu off the top, and we're forced to bind a card, which ends up being Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu. So that sucks, but we no guard his grade 1. And then we ride Kurokazuchi, use the skill of Kurokazuchi, discard the Goddess of the Sun, and then we have that normal unit that gets added. And so we go for the grade 2 play here with Choquette, and then we whiff it, and then we go for Amino Murakumo, and then we do get a Susanoo, and we discard the Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu, so we can get some Mutos later, hopefully. We attack for 28, our opponent no guards, and then we pass turn. Our opponent rides Fusing Striker, and then uses the skill to check top 5 for a God Hand, whiffs it. And then our opponent plays Drill the Duel on Rearguard Circle, goes for Iron Killer, and then uses another Fusing Striker, checking top 5 for a God Hand, again whiffs, and then attacks us for 9. We no guard. Thankfully, he does not hit a front trigger. So we are able to block this Iron Killer, and then we just go ahead and I think take the Fusing Striker. And so this time we ride Susanoo. And finally, this time we remembered to check the top 2. So we check the top 2. We reveal one, which is Muto, and we put the other card to the bottom. We use Susanoo to get Muto into the Tetramagus to hand. So important thing to note here is it doesn't always have to be triggers that you guys get. It can be setup cards that you guys get. So when I saw that Muto in my top 2, I got it because I knew that I had Goddess of the Sun Amaterasu already. So I wanted to get that back in the hand. So I used Tetramagus. And so now I'm attacking with 25, knowing that I'm going to check a crit. So I actually check a crit and a heal. So it makes it extremely worth. Our opponent doesn't hit any damage triggers, so attacking for 58 is out of this world insane because he does not have any PGs in his hand. So we're able to just put him to 5 damage just like that. He goes for Riding God Hand and goes for Excel 2. So he draws a card. And then he plays a Drill the Duel in the front row. I'm guessing just in case he hits a front trigger. You know, it could be better for him. Our opponent goes into battle phase and is probably going to attack us with God Hand first. Yep, so attacks us with God Hand, counterblast 1, and discards his Quick Shield. And then he gets +1 drive, and we decided to just PG that because it is the obvious choice because he does get a crit. So unfortunately he heals, but fortunately he doesn't hit a crit either. I mean a front either. So he just goes for attacking our rear guards. So we intercept, and then we bait him because he attacks with our his really big column into our rear guard, which we really didn't care about the whole time, but sometimes we just block cards to make our opponent think that we want them. So we go for attacking with Amaterasu. We stack cards on top of our deck. Our opponent blocks that, and then we attack for 25. Which our opponent proceeds to 2 to pass, and we put it all to Vanguard because we knew that there were 2 triggers on the top of our deck. So double crit just wins the game just like that, and that's why I was talking about why it's so important. If you know that your opponent doesn't have a PG and you know what is going to be checked because of Amaterasu, it's very important to pay attention to what your opponent guards with, because when I checked that first crit, I already knew that I was going to put all to Vanguard just so that that double crit could go through and hit. But that has been the FutureFight Vanguard video for Susanoo. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the deck. Do you think this deck's insane? Do you think it's bad? Do you hate it? Let me know down in the comments down below. Also, be sure to check out my second channel, Let's Plays Animes. Check out the join button if you guys are interested in supporting the channel further. And check out our Twitch at LPA Empire. But with that being said, this has been Cardfight Empire, aka Josh Stallworth, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.